the holy wounds of Christ. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, upon him was the chastisement that made us whole, and with his stripes we are healed. Isaiah 53:5. 8 days later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. The doors were shut, but Jesus came, and stood among them, and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, and see my hands, and put out your hand, and place it in my side. Do not be faithless, but believing." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." John 20:24-28. The sacred wounds which Jesus received during his passion are part of the price for our salvation. By his wounds you were healed. 1 Peter 2:24. Catholics have always loved and venerated these wounds, which Jesus still bears in his risen body, as an eternal sign of his redeeming love. Devotion in honor of the 5 holy wounds. As I kneeled before thee on the cross, most loving Savior of my soul, my conscience tells me it is I who have nailed thee to that cross with these hands of mine. As often as I have fallen into mortal sin, wearing thee with my monstrous ingratitude. My God, my chief and most perfect good, worthy of all my love, seeing thou hast ever loaded me with blessings, I cannot now undo my misdeeds, as I would most willingly, but I can, and will loathe them, grieving greatly for having offended thee who art infinite goodness. And now, kneeling at thy feet, I will try at least to compassionate thee, to give thee thanks, to ask of thee pardon and contrition. Wherefore, with heart and lips I say, to the wound of the left foot. Holy wound of the left foot, of my Jesus, I adore thee. I compassionate thee, O my Jesus, for that most bitter pain which thou didst suffer. I thank thee for the love whereby thou was wearied in overtaking me unto way, to ruin, and didst bleed amid the thorns and brambles of my sins. I offer to the eternal Father the pain and love of thy most sacred humanity, in atonement for my sins, all of which I detest with sincere and bitter contrition. To the wound of the right foot. Holy wound of the right foot, of my Jesus, I adore thee. I compassionate thee, O my Jesus, for that most bitter pain which thou didst suffer. I thank thee for the love which pierced thee with such torture and shedding of blood in order to punish my wanderings, and the guilty pleasures I have granted to my passions. I offer to the eternal Father all the pain and love of thy most sacred humanity, and I pray unto him for grace, to weep over my transgressions with burning tears, and to enable me to persevere in the good which I have begun, without ever swerving again from my obedience to the commandments of my God. To the wound of the left hand. Holy wound of the left hand, of my Jesus, I adore thee. I compassionate thee, O my Jesus, for that most bitter pain which thou didst suffer. I thank thee for having, in thy love, spared me the scourges and eternal damnation which my sins have merited. I offer to the eternal Father the pain and love of thy most sacred humanity, and I pray him to teach me how to turn to good account my span of life, and bring forth in it worthy fruits of penance, and so disarm the angry justice of my God. To the wound of the right hand. Holy wound of the right hand, of my Jesus, I adore thee. I compassionate thee, O my Jesus, for that most bitter pain which thou didst suffer. I thank thee for thy graces lavished on me with such love, in spite of all my miserable obstinacy. I offer to the eternal Father all the pain and love of thy most sacred humanity, and I pray him to change my heart and its affections, and make me do all my actions in accordance with the will of God. To the wound in the sacred side. Holy wound in the side of my Jesus, I adore thee. I compassionate thee, O my Jesus, for the cruel insult thou didst suffer. I thank thee, my Jesus, for the love which suffered thy side and heart to be pierced, that the last drops of blood and water might issue forth, making my redemption to abound. I offer to the eternal Father this outrage, and the love of thy most sacred humanity, that my soul may enter once for all into that most loving heart, eager and ready to receive the greatest sinners, and from it may never more depart.